what is the mindset do you think that makes it different? Like so many people they want to be an entrepreneur, right? I bet there's a lot of your friends who are maybe at Deloitte still today and maybe look at your life and be, man, I want to be like Emil. Like I want to go be an entrepreneur, right? This podcast is all about being an entrepreneur. I want to go be an entrepreneur. Yet they never do, right? Look, I'm going to ask you to speculate and maybe be a little bit mean about your thinking here, but like, why don't they ever go do it? This isn't just your friends. This is maybe people in the world in general who don't take that step. What are they scared of? Why should they be scared or not be scared?
Well, they should. As I said, I mean, I think they don't do it. Like if they did a few days, in my life, they pretty quickly, I think, decide that they don't want to do it because the perceived benefits that you get, which are financial, there's financial benefits if you're successful, oftentimes are greatly outweighed by the loss of physical health and mental health. And people, I think there's two categories of entrepreneurs. I was part of a group that really prioritized lifestyle entrepreneurship, and the idea was how to make at least $1 million a year working only 10 hours a week. And I think for those people, I'm not sure why people don't do it, actually. I think they had some really interesting business models, and I think there were some really interesting people. Those people were living a great life. For the people that want to kind of like are sort of like messed up like me, I totally understand why people wouldn't want to work 100 hours and mortgage their entire future and their credit score and go get, hundreds of thousands of dollars of personally secured bank loans and then go try to, build something from nothing. I totally get that. I think it's one of the most difficult, painful experiences building Candid was, and I really wouldn't wish it upon anyone, again. And that was partially due to ignorance and me not knowing things like you could go out and get investors and, things like that. And I think I learned a lot along the way. But I think the reason people don't do it is just because it's hard and you really do you make a lot of money being an entrepreneur, but you have to earn it. And I don't think that there's asymmetric returns in entrepreneurship, or at least, I think that you really do, like you have to earn your battle scars to make money. I don't think it's ever easy. And I think that compared to a job where you have some level of security and you can sleep at night and you don't have, like in our case, like you're not your own boss, you have 15 or 18 bosses that are your clients, and I think like that, people would much rather do something that gives them time for their family and significant others and gives them some sense of security than go out and do this.
So I agree. But yet I also, it bothers me a little bit that there seems to be a rising anti-entrepreneur perspective in the world where it's like, I hate Jeff Bezos or, these major billionaires who've made their money through building really successful businesses. And yet they put the effort in the work in to go create something out of nothing that people are willing to pay for, right? No one's forcing you to use Amazon. And yet you are doing it on a regular basis. So in the same thing, maybe there's friends of yours who have this envy. They're like, well, Emil just got lucky. He got things handed to him or who knows? And they don't remember the struggle or even know the struggle that you went through to get there. What is your sort of answer to those folks who have that perspective?
Yeah, and I think my advice to that is like, I encourage you to go to literally any other country and see how the average person in one of those countries lives. And I think that it comes from a place of, I do think there's a concerning trend of entrepreneurs doing less and giving back less. I think we've seen philanthropy sort of like basically fall off a cliff.
Really? Is that a data point?
I think it's a data point when we look at, there was a time, first of all, so there's a few things here, like if we want to get historical. First of all, the richest people in the world have always been hated by a large portion of the population. There are rare exceptions where you see like, universal love for someone, but Carnegie was hated, Rockefeller was hated, and I don't think that Bezos and Musk are any more hated than, Rockefeller was in his time. I mean, it was. But second of all, I think that, history looks back at Rockefeller and Carnegie more fondly because they donated the entirety of their fortunes and basically kind of like built the country. But if you look at sentiments during the time, I don't think it's that different. I do think that there's been this sort of rise of anti-entrepreneurship like that in America. I've noticed recently, like over the last like 5 to 10 years, where it's like before it's like, yeah, like hardworking, he started his own business, this is awesome. And now it's like, oh, it's like, why did he start his own business? Like, this isn't fair that he has that much. And for that, I just think that, it happens because I think that if people went out and saw the world and saw how the average person in Southern America lived, or the average person in China lived, or in these countries that don't have these sort of rewards for entrepreneurship and don't have these sort of open markets, I think their perspective would change very differently, because the way that someone lower middle class in America lives is like heaven, and it's just like a dream. And it's the way the richest people in some of these other countries live, just given the amenities and the lifestyle that they're afforded.